No hesitation, no speeches, just cold resolve and perfect timing. Across 3 Equalizer films, Robert McCall delivers punishment with eerie calm and unstoppable force. From a quiet diner to a seaside cafe, these are the most badass scenes from the Equalizer 1, 2, and 3. One of cinema's most precise opening executions arrived in The Equalizer, 2014, when Russian mobsters underestimated Robert McCall. Slavy and his crew had been trafficking Eastern European women for years, operating with impunity until they targeted Terry, a waitress who was McCall's friend. You can notice McCall's transformation when Slavy poured himself a drink without permission. His breathing slowed to a combat-ready rhythm as his fingers flexed once before stilling. The stopwatch click echoed through the suddenly silent diner, while McCall's eyes darted across the room. He scanned every detail with surgical focus, tracing the corkscrew on the counter, the reflection in the dessert case, the glint of metal tucked beneath the table. Even the way light caught on glass factored into his timing. Slavy barely had a chance before his hand was pinned to the tabletop and the corkscrew plunged in. Glass shattered across the throat of the second thug as he lunged in surprise, his gurgled cry stifled by broken teeth and steel. McCall saved the final shot for last. A single shotgun blast at point-blank range ended the last threat. Then he calmly reset his stopwatch at exactly 28 seconds, straightened his coat, and stepped into the afternoon light as if he had simply finished a business call and was on his way home. Under the humming fluorescent lights of a nearly empty hardware store, The Equalizer, 2014, delivered one of its most badass finales when Robert McCall turned a home mart into a personal battlefield. After dismantling Slavy's empire, McCall faced off with the cold-blooded Nikolai and his men, using nothing but hardware store tools and tactical brilliance. The first enforcer went down with a nail gun shot clean through the skull, fired in silence from across an aisle. McCall vanished before the body hit the ground. In the garden section, he rigged a sack of fertilizer to fall onto a sharpened pipe, impaling another thug through the chest. One man bled out in an aisle rigged with glass shards and tripwires, his body caught in a snare of wire and falling shelving. McCall had mapped out every corner of the store beforehand, memorizing sightlines and exits. With the store lit only by sparking light fixtures and flickering monitors, McCall moved like a phantom, soaking the floors, cutting power, weaponizing every tool in reach. When Nikolai finally caught up to him, the final strike came without warning. A steel spike jammed straight into his throat. As the sprinkler system fizzled to a stop and alarms faded, McCall stepped away from the carnage he'd orchestrated with quiet precision. Every death measured, every move exact, every inch of the store mapped in his mind. In The Equalizer 2, 2018, one of Robert McCall's most ruthless displays came during a high-speed confrontation on a moving train through Turkey. A young girl had been abducted, and McCall, posing as a quiet passenger in first class, tracked her captors aboard the train with silent resolve. As the train slipped into a tunnel, darkness gave him cover. The first man never saw it coming. McCall disarmed him with a lightning-fast strike and used the man's own knife to end the fight in seconds. Moving to the next carriage, he shoved another thug through a glass door, then used the metal from a seat frame to block a gunshot and break the man's arm with a single torque. Inside the private cabin, he found the girl locked behind a partition. The final captor reached for his weapon, but McCall had already moved, snapping his neck against the window frame with surgical brutality. He freed the girl without a word, calmly wiping the blade clean before sitting her down and signaling for silence. When the train emerged from the tunnel and the passengers looked around confused, McCall was seated again, silent and unreadable, as if nothing had happened at all, just another commuter on a journey no one else witnessed. In The Equalizer, 2 from 2018, the apartment ambush sequence proves that McCall doesn't need an exit plan. He is the exit plan. After discovering a man had assaulted a young woman, McCall calmly infiltrates the high-rise penthouse where the attackers lounge in arrogance, surrounded by luxury. The moment the door opens, he's already moving. The first blow comes like a ghost, an elbow to the throat, a wrist twist, and the man is unconscious before he can scream. McCall then uses the environment like a weapon. He slams one assailant's head through a glass table, pulls down curtains to blind another, and drives a hardcover book into a man's windpipe. The fight shifts through the apartment like a hurricane of controlled violence, each takedown cleaner and faster than the last. When the final thug reaches for his gun, McCall is already behind him, dragging him to the floor and whispering a warning that chills more than any bullet. There's no grand speech, no sirens, just a shattered room, gasping bodies, and McCall quietly disappearing down the hallway before anyone knew justice had arrived, the echo of violence lingering in the walls. In The Equalizer 3, which aired in 2023, McCall's introduction in the Sicilian winery sets a new bar for surgical menace. After tracking a mafia accountant to a secluded vineyard estate, he walks in calmly with a cane, pretending to be an injured stranger. What the mobsters don't know is that McCall has already incapacitated most of the guards outside. Inside, he surveys the room, a quiet den of wine barrels and heavy stone walls, then asks for the accountant by name. When they reach for weapons, he moves. The cane becomes a blade. In seconds, McCall disarms the first guard, slices through tendons, and hurls him into a barrel. Another thug charges and is slammed into a wine press, the old machinery groaning under new violence. McCall finishes the last man by impaling his leg with pruning shears, pinning him in place long enough to extract the location of the next target. He never raises his voice. He barely breaks a sweat. As he walks out, grape juice and blood mix across the cellar floor, and the cane taps rhythmically behind him, like a death sentence retreating into the fog, leaving nothing but silence and dread. Near the end of The Equalizer 3, McCall turns a seaside café into a kill zone when local enforcers try to intimidate him with numbers. The sun is just beginning to set, casting golden light across the cobblestones as McCall sits calmly at an outdoor table, sipping espresso. A convoy of armed men arrives in black SUVs, spilling into the quiet square with arrogance and noise. McCall doesn't flinch. As one of them approaches, he mutters a warning, once softly. It's ignored. In the blink of an eye, he strikes. A pen through the throat of the first attacker, a pistol ripped from the second's holster and fired low into the knee, then the chest. Chaos erupts as gunfire shatters glasses and sends pigeons flying. McCall uses overturned tables as cover, weaving through the narrow alleys with ghost-like speed. He finishes the last man with a close-quarters knife twist that leaves no doubt. When the smoke clears, locals peer from windows in stunned silence. McCall calmly places his cup down, untouched and still warm, before walking away. An invisible message written in bodies and fear left behind on the cafe floor. Every takedown is exact. Every finish leaves no doubt. Robert McCall walks away without a word, and what's left behind is a warning carved in silence.